All right. So welcome to the Wellbeing Through the Menopause webinar. My name is Vanessa Gaitlin. I'm a health coach and yoga educator. And this is really near and dear to my heart since I just turned 50 years old and have been seeing some changes for myself that I did not recognize. So let's jump right in. So I'm 50. I am a mom. I have an 11-year-old son and I'm self-employed. I am what's considered perimenopausal. And my story started out with extreme insomnia about a year ago. And I almost couldn't believe how little sleep I was getting. And it was impacting my day-to-day, so much so where I just felt I couldn't keep things together. I couldn't remember anything. I was grouchy at everyone. I was getting upset with my son, and I was incredibly impatient. It started there, and I would say that when I went to the doctors, they often asked me if I was depressed, if I was struggling, was I overwhelmed? And of course I was, because I wasn't sleeping. But their answer was to give me an antidepressant. And to be honest, I didn't feel depressed. I just felt extremely exhausted because I wasn't getting any sleep. And I didn't feel like it was my thoughts that were interfering with that. I would easily fall asleep, but then wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Then about 6 months after that, I felt incredible pain in my vagina. And actually, it felt like and seemed like it was changing shape. So if you can imagine, like the inside parts were starting to turn and come outside. So the parts that are normally soft and well inside was coming onto the outside and becoming quite irritated. So much so that I wasn't wearing jeans anymore. I felt uncomfortable. I was thinking about it all the time. And when I went to the gynecologist, she told me everything was okay. She did all different tests. They tested for STDs. They tested for infections. They even went into my urinary tract to see if that was the source of the pain, and they couldn't find anything. So I left that doctor's appointment extremely disappointed because I still had the same symptoms, but there was no medicine that they could give me for that. So it continues on. I started to have other problems with dry skin, creepy crawling feelings on my skin. And then the rage started, this really intense anger that I couldn't really explain. And it was happening during my time of ovulation. And normally ovulation is the time for being outside, being creative, being in contact with people. And here I was absolutely angry. Fast forward 6 months after that, that rage became a depression. Something, again, where I didn't feel like my life warranted depression, but I felt it hard. So hard. And as soon as I would get my period, it would lift. It was like a tension really tight and then suddenly released. So doctor wanted to give me antidepressants. My first gynecologist said, hey, everything's fine because your period's coming on time. We can't give you anything to take care of it. And then I finally went to another doctor, another gynecologist, who said, hey, it's totally logical that you're having these symptoms, the insomnia, the vaginal pain, the creepy crawlies on your skin, this rage and unbalanced emotions. She's like, look at your age. You're absolutely coming into that time of the menopause. So finally, I got some solutions. I got a nice cream, which contains some estrogen, and some remedies for sleep, which I'll share a bit later, and a natural remedy to kind of calm the hormonal symptoms, which I'll get into later as well. So I just wanted to say that this effort of mine, being a health coach and yoga person, really comes from a need, from a personal need to understand what's happening inside my body and how I want to help it heal. So my goal is to educate and empower women so that they can embrace the change in their body, mind, and emotions during the menopause. And it's very often that people think about the menopause as simply being, you go from being reproductive, like I can have a baby, to I can't have a baby. But there's so much more going on, and I really want to get into that today. So this presentation will talk about what's happening in the body, what you can put into your toolbox in terms of medicine, right? So I'm not totally walking away from the medical track. We'll talk about that, some natural remedies, how nutrition can play a role, and then menopause yoga. And then I want to offer you a fresh perspective. So a lot of times people say menopause is all doom and gloom. It's hot flashes, night sweats, it's the worst. But there may be a different way to look at it. And then your next steps. So what's happening in menopause? And we as women have not been able to make this definition ourselves. Mostly it's been a man's world and them putting us into a box. The whole point is that menopause is not an illness. It's a natural progression of our life. Because you remember at one time we were children that became teenagers. And in that teenage time, we started with all of the hormones coming in. Then maybe there was a time where we were able to have a baby and we had a baby. And that was another time where there was a mass amount of hormones and a lot of change in the body. So the menopause is yet another hormonal change where the hormones are lessening in the body and we're shifting more into that next phase of life. So what's interesting is that when we become a teenager, there's normally like a sweet 16 party and a celebration. When we have a baby, there's also a big celebration. But when we go through the menopause, nobody's really talking about it. It's kind of taboo. It's almost like a secret. But why don't we share? Why don't we talk about this more? Why can't we support each other as women? It's really something to think about. So where are you in the process? So this is the current medical definition. And so you can see there's nice boxes to make sense out of it. So there's perimenopause, and the average age is in your 40s. And I just have to say, you can also go into menopause a lot earlier. So age is not really a stage, but this is how the medical community has put us into boxes. There's other reasons like illnesses. Also, if someone had cancer and cancer treatments, also possible that they went into early menopause, or someone who had a hysterectomy. So this is just boxes, but there are other reasons why women go into menopause. So perimenopause, the estrogen levels start to lower and the periods become unpredictable. When you come to menopause, the average age is 52 in the United States and in the UK. And this is where the estrogen drops significantly. And the way you can define that you're in menopause is if you have had 12 months without a period. So you don't really know that you're in it during that 12 months. It's only after the fact that you go, I must be in my menopause because it's been 12 months since I have my period. Okay, then you have postmenopause. So any age after menopause, and the estrogen levels, they lower, and it starts to create this normal aging process, and you have no longer a period. So the challenge with this definition is that for many different reasons, people can be in menopause, and it's overly focused on the period and fertility. It doesn't talk about the symptoms. It doesn't talk about other health things that are going on during this time. And what's interesting is that even after you've stopped having your period, it's still possible to get pregnant up to 2 years after you've had that last period. So it's something to keep in mind. Also, that when you make it into postmenopause, there are women who are still having hot flashes, night sweats, and still feeling those same symptoms. So it's not like you make it into a different box and then it stops. It's something that stretches over 5 to 10 years. So what is the menopause? Let's try a different definition. So it's a transition. So from the teenage years through adulthood, estrogen is primarily provided to the body by the ovaries. So you have the ovaries here giving you estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So as we age, the change starts to happen, and the ovaries make less and less estrogen. Now, as this starts to happen, so it's lowering coming from the estrogen, but then the body makes a shift. It says, uh-oh, we still need estrogen because estrogen is important to a woman's body. It starts to make estrogen in other glands. So the adrenal gland, which is also responsible for our stress hormones, is the main gland that starts to make more estrogen. And the other interesting thing is our adipose tissue. So when we talk about like the squidgy parts at the bottom of our belly, this tissue, this fatty tissue, is also responsible for creating estrogen. And so no wonder when we're going through this phase that we tend to hold weight around, they call it the rubber tire, or this thickening around the waist. And it's a way for the body to start making more estrogen. Now, the thing is, as this shift is happening, we need to think that estrogen is not only a hormone for reproductivity, right? It's not just about making babies. It's something that's found in every cell in our body. It actually helps calcium go into the bones. It helps our skin to be supple. It helps our heart to be working the way it should. And it's something that you never hear about. No one is ever talking about the fact that estrogen is more important for anything else other than being able to have a baby. So let's have a look at how this plays out. So if you have a piece of paper, start jotting down, what are you feeling at this moment? And so here's a grouping of different types of symptoms that you might be feeling. This is coming from other women and from my mentor, Petra Coveney. And so it could be things that you might not think of. So something around the head, so dry eyes, headache, tinnitus, when you have that ringing in the ear, the loss of balance. There's common things like hot flashes, dryness, itching, the thinning of the skin, joints, so soreness, stiffness, the sacroiliac joint, so that's in the pelvis. You might have like that really deep lower back pain happening, or frozen shoulder. So I'm a yoga teacher, and a few months ago, I had a really, really stiff shoulder, so much so that I couldn't pick up my arm higher than this, and it was really difficult. And what's interesting to know is that estrogen is an anti-inflammatory. So when you're exercising and moving, normally it would help to reduce that inflammation. But as we go through the change, it's lessening, and then we don't have that available to us. Other things that I found interesting was dizziness, insomnia, brain fog, lack of focus. And if you think about us in our current world, that we have to be productive, right? So we got to always be on, we got to be moving, we got to be on top of it. You have to have the answers in the meeting. You need to be aware. That could be it could be pretty shocking when that starts to happen to you and you feel kind of incapable. And that has to do with the lessening of the estrogen. So it is really so much more important than just periods. So if you're not sure where you are in the process, this is something that you can look up. It's called the Green's Climacteric Scale. And what it is a list of symptoms. And you can see where you are, if you're having them or not at all. And what I like about it is that at the bottom, it could show you which area it's hitting you. So if it's psychological, so somatic in the body, is it anxiety? Is it sexual dysfunction? Is it vasomotor? So that's the hot flushes and dealing with temperature in your body. And this is a great list in terms of being able to go back to your doctor and say, hey, it's not just headaches or brain fog. There's actually, something happening with the temperature. I'm having cold spells, hot spells, sometimes palpitations in my heart, which could be scary because it feels like you're having a heart attack, but it gives them a bigger picture that then they can say, maybe something else is happening. And I have to say, I was speaking with a good friend of mine today, and she let me know that she went through menopause at 45, which is quite young. And so when she was having these symptoms, she had to question herself and say, is it me? You know, am I doing something wrong? Am I missing the point? And then her doctor told her, no, actually, it's your time to go through the change. So it's really important to know where you're at, what you're feeling, and record that. And it really helps with the conversation you have with your doctor. So health concerns, right? So estrogen is not only for reproduction. So osteoporosis is one of those things that you start to notice in women as they get older. And it's something that you cannot see. You see it probably in the older women, that you see them starting to hunch over. You don't necessarily know until you have a fracture, but it's something that's real and something you need to pay attention to. And it's happening in about 1 in 2 or 3 people in the UK, US are at risk. And this happens a lot because we start to have that feeling of being out of balance, not having the strength in our muscles, and not exercising. So there's definitely things that you can do against this. Really important to pay attention to. Then we have heart disease. So it's something that we often think of more in men than women, but actually for women, as soon as they get to the age of 50, it becomes more in a risk for them. And the reason is the drop in estrogen, it starts putting that weight around our middle, that thickening around the waist, and this puts pressure then on the heart. I know. The next one is breast cancer. So this is one that's definitely linked with genetics and increases as we age, but it increases even more if you're drinking alcohol regularly, smoking tobacco, being overweight, and not exercising. So this is definitely one you watch out for, which could be managed with lifestyle changes. And then mental health. So this is something I learned last week. The rate of women taking their own lives increases at the ages of 45 and 50. And this happens to also be at the time when we're going through perimenopause and menopause. And it makes me sad because it's right in that time where hormones are shifting and we're starting to see things differently. Life is changing quite a bit. So in this moment, an antidepressant may not be the best, especially if that depression is coming from the hormones. So it's really important to stay in close contact with how you're feeling and what's going on for you in your life. Journaling is excellent at that, so that you're able to talk to your doctor about what's really happening for you. So your toolbox, let's empower you with possibilities. I know I talked about some really weird stuff, but let's talk about what you actually can do. So remember, estrogen is super important. And when we're going through this change, it's a shift from the ovaries making the estrogen to the adrenal glands, right? So if you're thinking about the adrenal glands, they're responsible for the stress hormones. So if you are in stress and building all those stress hormones, it's not making any estrogen. So it's super important to be chill, to be calm, to manage stress, take time to rest, to allow yourself to go through this transition from the ovaries towards the adrenal glands. If you remember, like back to when you were a teenager, you're probably taking lots of naps, sleeping a lot, sleeping late. We always say, oh, those lazy teenagers. It's because their body's going through a big transformation. And it is the exact same thing that's happening to us, except in reverse. So allowing yourself time to rest. I know this is not the most popular thing ever that you've ever heard, but it is endemic in our society. We don't give ourselves the time to rest. We don't do it without guilt. we would rather do something for somebody else than actually take the time to lay down. If we lay down on the couch and put our feet up, there's all these kinds of words that are happening that's saying you're lazy. What are you doing? You could be doing something. You didn't finish that. There's a lot of guilt around it. But this is absolutely the greatest time that you can allow yourself to rest, because you're actually doing a lot. Your body is doing a lot on the inside. You can't see it, but it's happening. So besides allowing yourself time to rest, eating well is important. Doing calming exercise along with some cardio. And so cardio to get that heart pumping and taking care of it. Meditate and add in more mindfulness. And this is really important for the brain. It's been proven to help you to focus, to maintain your brain, to keep those synapses doing their activity. It's incredible. Take care of digestion and hydration. So we're mostly made up of water, and that allows the body to do what it needs to do. Sleep, which is kind of like ha-ha, if you think about it, because that's one of the biggest symptoms is not being able to sleep. But if you don't sleep at night, trying to find the time to take naps during the day or find little pockets of rest. Get into nature. There's studies on this now on something called forest bathing, and the feeling that you get from going into the forest, into nature. And if you can't get in there, I recommend going to botanical garden or the plant shop, just so you can be close and near nature. Also, animals have that feeling on us. It's something that helps us to calm and to settle and feel grounded, which is so important during this time. And so my last bullet is really small because I hate being negative. But check your relationship with caffeine, alcohol, and sugar. So alcohol, a glass of wine has been my friend for the past year or so. I love me a glass of red. But I will say it's not helping me sleep at all. It doesn't help me feel good, and I feel quite dehydrated and not okay. Caffeine, I've also loved for the past few years. Makes me feel a bit racy and panicky in the heart. Also makes me quite sad. And sugar, I kind of feel okay with. So it's not about taking it out completely. I don't work with that approach. I feel like it doesn't work for people at all to completely abstain, but just check in and see what is your relationship with it. How often do you lean on it? Do you really need it? And is it really bringing you forward? Just have a look and see what that's like. So medicine. I'm slowly running out of time, but I'm going to keep going. So we have hormone replacement therapy, sleep aids and sedatives, antidepressants, and osteoporosis medication. So these are some of the things that are available to you. It's really important that you talk with your doctor about this in terms of your history, how heavy your symptoms are, what your age is, just so that they can know what's appropriate for you that won't hurt you, but still let you get through the symptoms. So at the moment, I'll speak just for myself. I haven't done the HRT, the hormone replacement therapy, but what I am working with right now is the vaginal estrogen. And so it's a cream. I'll show you what it looks like. And this cream is something that you put inside the vagina along the outside, and it has made the biggest difference. So I feel like that part that was coming out is slowly going back inside, and that the skin feels thicker and has a nicer texture to it. There's still a bit of itching and redness, but is not as bad as it was before. And the idea about having this cream is that I'm not taking a pill that then the estrogen goes everywhere in my body. I'm putting this cream exactly where it's needed. So the estrogen is only going into those tissues right there where it's needed and being useful instead of going in through my mouth and through my entire body. The other ways, the estrogen or estrogen progesterone replacement, there's tablets, patches, gels, sprays, creams, depending on what type of symptoms you're having and where you need it most. And it's something that's a bit tricky because when you're in perimenopause, the hormones are going up and down, sometimes every single day. So it's really difficult for the doctor to prescribe an exact dose that's going to be right for you as you go through the change. You may find that you need a higher dose in the beginning, and then as your body shifts and the adrenals start to take over, then you need less and less of a dose. It really depends. So when you sign up for HRT, you have to know it's not bulletproof. It's not going to be 100% right the first day out. You need to give it some time. You have to play around with it. And again, the journal is super helpful to keep track of what's happening to you, how much medicine you're taking, how you're taking care of yourself, and making the connection with how your symptoms are. Sleep aids and sedatives. I've tried sleeping pills. It was horrible for me. I felt like I had a hangover after. I ended up taking something more natural, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But these are things that could be really useful, especially if you're not getting any sleep. There is a space for antidepressants if it's right for you, and also if it's right for what's happening in your world at that moment. And if you have an inkling that your bones may not be in the right place, maybe you know someone in your family who also has osteoporosis and you're concerned, I would definitely talk with the doctor about getting a bone density scan to see where you're at. And then you have that benchmark and you can see how you're doing. But osteoporosis medications are also available. So natural remedies. So I just want to say, if you are going into this realm of supplements or taking different food things, really go to a credible source and make sure you get high quality supplements and ingredients. So in Switzerland, you can see it'll say Swiss Medic on it. So this here is black cohosh, the first one on the list, and you can see there right there it says Swiss Medic, and so you know that it's a reputable, credible source or ingredients. So black cohosh, I just started taking that, and that's for hot flushes and night sweats, muscle and joint pain, libido, anxiety. And so my gynecologist prescribed that to me as a first step to almost get to the HRT. So I'm not ready for HRT, but this maybe will help me with the insomnia and calm some of the other symptoms that I'm having. Valerian root. So valerian was something I was taking before for sleep. And in Switzerland, that's called Redormine. And I also had a prescription for this. It was helpful in helping me to relax and be calm to sleep. Sometimes it didn't work to keep me asleep constantly, but it was helpful. Milk thistle, dandelion root supports your liver. Passion flower helps with the insomnia and anxiety. Sage with the hot flushes and night sweats. St. John's wort, we know this one in terms of low mood, but you have to be careful not to take it with any other medications. And then there's adaptogens. So if you're thinking about hormones, and this also goes into the direction if you've had a burnout situation or extreme exhaustion, these adaptogens really help to regulate cortisol levels. So it helps to keep the hormones in balance. And so you have rhodiola, ashwagandha, and shatavari. I've tried ashwagandha. It didn't agree with me. And so again, I just wanted to say it's a little bit of a exploration and seeing what symptoms you're having and what could possibly help you. If you want to go more the medical route or more the natural remedy route, it's up to you. Make sure you just talk with a professional. I often go in Basel to the pharmacy called Saner, the Saner Apotheke, or the Wettstein Apotheki. They're both really focused. They have medicines as well, but they also do a lot of natural remedies. And they're really great to speak to in terms of your specific situation and what natural things you can try to support yourself. So nutrition, eat with purpose and joy. So I have some pancakes here in the picture with lots of fruits. And I think that's the point. I don't want you to take away stuff or take away all the bad stuff. It's really about having fun, eating with joy, but also adding in the good stuff that's going to support you. So we always talk about eating a variety of foods. Yeah, I often give presentations about food, and it's always the same thing: vegetables, legumes, soy, nuts, seeds, berries, apples, whole grains. More of these whole foods in your diet, less of the processed stuff. But I think what's key here is really choosing those foods that are anti-inflammatory. Estrogen is an anti-inflammatory, a natural one that's living inside your body. And so if you're having less of that, less of the thing that's preventing inflammation in your body, it would be really helpful if you can add in foods that actually quell that inflammation. So things like olive oil, seafood, nuts, seeds, avocado, and fiber-rich foods. Then we have prebiotic food. And so these are food that feed the bacteria in your gut. So things like leeks and garlics and onions, cabbage, dark berries, live fermented foods. So fermented foods became popular some 5 years ago. You can get things here like sauerkraut and kimchi. It's now available in the Coop and in Migros, as well as the apple cider. Excuse me. But there's some of the, hold on a second. The yogurts are now available, like the bifidus yogurts, which actually helps to feed your gut bacteria. And then the last one, identify trigger foods. So if you are having hot flashes or the night sweats, it may be that some foods are actually triggering that to happen. And if you take them out, it could reduce it. So I'm not a fan of taking out 100%, but my gynecologist did tell me if I had a big meal late at night with a few glasses of wine, I could be guaranteed to have either night sweats or some hot flashes. So I think it's just about knowing what's going to be that trigger and knowing if you eat that food that maybe it's then going to happen, or avoiding it on certain days when you know you just want to have a good night's sleep. So supplements, again, paying attention to high quality supplements. We have omega-3, some minerals, vitamins, phytoestrogens, and probiotics. So omega-3, we often talk about as brain, eye, and heart health. But inside is DHEA and EPA, which also supports our hormones. So those are kind of like the building blocks or the ingredients to our hormones. So if you can add more omega-3 inside, either as fatty fish or as a supplement, it would be amazing. Then we have minerals, so magnesium. Now, magnesium really helped me a lot because my muscles were getting tight, so tight that I felt like I couldn't stretch them anymore. And that never happened to me. I started taking magnesium in high doses. It also helped to calm my nervous system, and it helped with my sleep as well. So I take a high dose magnesium all the time. Calcium, so strong bones, but it also helps the nerves to send messages back and forth and works with the hormones. So not only is it key for your bones, it's also key for those nerves. Vitamins D, D3, and K2, they work together with calcium to keep your bones strong. And then B vitamins, which is one that I never really paid too much attention to before, that really works in your nervous system and to build energy. So B12, it's something that many of us are low in, and it's something you can get tested on in a blood test. B12 really brought a lot of my energy back. phytoestrogens, so things that are coming from soy or something called rhodiola. They may help soften symptoms because they mimic the estrogen. They're a type of an estrogen, but from plants. And so it tends to make them a bit softer. And then probiotics, supporting your digestion, which is also really good for your gut health. And some people say that good gut health equals good mental health. And that's because the tissues are almost the same. So menopause yoga. So the aim of menopause yoga is to help women to transition positively to the next stage of life, physically, mentally, and spiritually. To make this transition, she needs to reconnect and listen with her intuitive self, learn what she needs to support her on this journey, and let go of what is not needed. So that's coming from Petra Coveney, and she's the creator of Menopause Yoga, and I did my training with her. And I really appreciate this because it gives a positive spin. It allows us to really rewrite the narrative on how we go through this change. So menopause yoga is not just about doing poses. It's also about creating a women's circle, a place where we can come together, share what's going on for us, and really do that without judgment. And I don't know about you, but there's not very many places, especially with social media around, where there isn't any judgment. So then we have the yoga poses themselves. They're made specifically to deal with the symptoms, to deal with increasing bone density, muscle mass, flexibility, and to help us maintain our balance. And then we have the meditation and breathing. This is all about the mind-body connection. So as you breathe and reconnect to yourself, you start to realize what's really happening for you. Positive thinking. So creating opportunities and really giving us that chance to rewrite the female narrative. So it's not just about getting older, it's about being wiser, bringing that wisdom in. Back in the old days, women were relished for what they knew and what they could bring to the table and how they can guide the younger generations. Let's bring that back. And then journaling. So learning more about yourself and what you really need to thrive. So that's menopause yoga. And the reason why it works is that the poses, it gives you weight bearing, balance, strength, it lubricates your joints, the posture is important, and it brings an element of that aerobic and heart exercise. The breath work, the mind-body connection, it calms the nervous system and helps you sleep. And then the meditation helps you to focus. Practicing self-compassion as these changes are happening to your body, it's really important to say that this is okay and that I accept it. Because the more you resist it, the more difficult it becomes. What you resist persists. So a fresh perspective. So we're starting to look at the menopause through the lens of the seasons, thinking about the different stages of our lives. So spring, starting out with the teenage years, we're planting the seeds, we're learning, exploring, and making mistakes. Moving on into summer, which is our adult life, which is about energy, about productivity, and also reproductivity. And this is the point where we're giving, we're creating, we're building. It's the fire, constant doing. And then we come into autumn, which is perimenopause. So if you think about this time in nature, the trees are there, they're dropping their leaves, and as the leaves are falling, they're not really sure where they're going to fall. There's the element of, what's going to happen here? Where am I going? And it's possibly a time to let go of what no longer serves you. I know for myself, I've really done a lot of thinking in the past few months, and this happened completely naturally. Just really thinking about what's not working for me, things that I've agreed to in the past that I just feel like I don't want to do anymore. And I can't say that I have something new to take its place, but I'm really clear on what is not working and what has to go. And then we come into winter, which is the menopause. And sometimes we think of winter as cold and lifeless. But what if we thought about the winter as when there's snow outside and it's completely quiet because the snow dampens the sound? And because there's snow outside, it gives us the permission to stay inside, to be quiet, to curl up with a book, to have a cup of tea, to be with those people that we love, to not be forced to go outside when we don't want to go. And what's interesting about the trees during this time, we think that they're dead and nothing's happening. But what actually is happening is the tree is sending its sap down into the earth, down into its roots, and the roots are going deeper and going wider. So it goes deep and then wide, and they're making connections with other trees. So if one tree doesn't have enough sustenance, enough food, another tree will send it food. And so it's making the connection, growing roots, and taking care of one another. And I think that's a really nice way to think about the winter, the menopause. And once you've gone through menopause, you have postmenopause, which we now call the second spring. And I'm excited about this because it's a fresh start. There's no more periods. There's no more monthly headaches, swelling, uncomfortable, cramping, none of this stuff. All of that energy that we used to give away is now staying inside us. So the energy is going down to where our ovaries are and then coming back to our heart. And it allows us to have a fresh start. So this is the chance to be outgoing, creative, expansive, exploring. It's the time to really redefine who you are in this new world without being reproductive or having to be productive. It's really the chance for you to define what your life is like. And I'm excited about that. So I'll read a poem to you called Unstoppable by Donna Ashworth. Unstoppable, they called her, but I saw her stop. I saw her stop many times. Sometimes I thought she had stopped for good, but no, she always found a way to resurrect, rise again. Not the same, never the same, each time a little more determined and less vulnerable. Unstoppable, they said, but I think it was in the stopping that she finally found her power. So your next steps. As a coach, I like to turn this back to you. What did you find interesting from this webinar? What do you want to try? What do you want to know more about? And is there one thing you can do to support yourself right now? So just take a moment, write down anything that resonated with you. And so now I want to share some resources with you. There was a really great New York Times article about, so women have been misled about the menopause. And it's great because it really explains why hormone replacement therapy was put to the side and is now coming back onto the table. It explains everything in great detail, and it will let you know the history of how we got to where we are today with medicine. Then there's a book called Menopause, All You Need to Know in One Concise Manual by Dr. Louise Newson. She is a doctor in the UK and is making big strides in what's available to women in terms of getting menopause support. She talks about the menopause, she talks about HRT, she talks about different natural remedies, and she goes through everything in such a detailed way that you will really understand what's happening inside your body. She's also really good to follow on Instagram, so you can see her interviews and how she talks about the menopause. Then there's the Hormone Repair Manual by Laura Bryden, ND. So she's a naturopathic doctor, so it's a little bit of a different spin, so not medical, but more the natural way. And she's in New Zealand, and she offers a different way to approach it, more in the terms of food and natural remedies. But it's also quite interesting because she does explain the challenges, the changes, and the symptoms in a very clear and concise way. Then some new things that I'm offering. So next week, I offer a free webinar on the menopause. So we will be doing some yoga. So yoga and mindfulness. So we'll do that as a practice. Then there's a workshop on September 9th, which is 3 hours in Basel-Stadt, where we go through, create the women's circle, spend some time together, going through the symptoms, understanding what's happening for us, and then actually practicing yoga to help support those symptoms. And then in January, I'm offering a retreat, which I'm really excited about, in Launen by Gstaad. So it's really, you get to Gstaad and then you keep going all the way to the end of the road and you come to this beautiful place where you can see a gorgeous view of the mountains. When we're there, it'll be covered in snow. So really going through that menopausal winter, but inside we'll be cozy and warm with a fireplace, practicing yoga, eating really nice food, and connecting with one another. So I just wanted to say thank you for being a part of this. And if you have any questions, you can write to me, or you can come to my website and see what's new. And I look forward to seeing you again.